Well, hello. Hi, Sherry. Welcome. Um, Thanks for stopping by tonight. And just want to adjust something here. So, welcome to another night of streaming fun. Um, as always, if anybody's out there watching, and I know somebody is out there watching, if you're out there, just need to check and see if you can see, if you can hear, if everything is looking and sounding okay from out there. If you wouldn't mind just dropping me a chat and letting me know before I start battling away. Excellent, great. I love that icon. That's really cool. Nice. Well, welcome. Good evening. At least it's evening here, and hope everybody's doing well. Depending on who everybody is. Anyway, tonight I'm going to be talking about 2D animation. My name is Scott Claus. I'm with CG Spectrum, which is an online school. And if you're interested in finding out more about the CG Spectrum, please don't hesitate to check out some of the links on whatever platform you're looking at right now. And you can find out more about some of the classes that they offer, dealing with all sorts of things, the spectrum of CG computer-aided graphics. And tonight we're going to be talking about 2D animation specifically, but there are a bunch of other streams that are available, and you can look at those as well. And then you can also check out the website in which you would find more information about the classes and some of the free trials that are offered if you're interested in trying out one of the classes but you're not ready to commit. And so I urge you, if you're interested, to check out CG Spectrum and find out more about it. But tonight, the mission is to talk about 2D animation, and I'm going to be working on a scene. I've been working on this for the last couple of weeks. I'm getting very close to the finish line with this one. I feel I've completed the animation, but maybe tweaking things here and there. And then I'm going to jump right into the cleanup. I've already started. And as some people may know, the cleanup process is the fun part, as far as the heavy lifting is done with the animation, and now you're making it look really pretty. But it can also be time consuming, and it can be sort of persnickety, for want of a better word. And so I'm going to be working on that. I haven't done this in a stream for a while, so I'm going to be working on cleaning up this animation today. But at any time, if you're interested in asking any questions or have any comments about anything at all, please don't hesitate to drop me a line in the chat and let me know if there's something you'd like to know about specifically, or if you'd like to make any comments at all. But beyond that, I'm going to just be walking you through the process of this scene that I've been working on for a while, and that I will be finishing up the final animation and then doing cleanup. And by the way, this, my friend, is we've had conflicting reports on whether this is Chloe or Barney. Barney because of the purple, obviously, or Chloe because of feline friend of my friend Cherry. So anyway, I'm not sure, as always, what it is or what its name is or what it's even doing here, but it's here, and I always like to bring this one in for the introductions. Anyway, so let's now move on to the work itself. So here I have a scene that I've been working on in Toon Boom. Toon Boom is the primary animation software that we use for the 2D program at CG Spectrum. And so that's why I'm working on that program, and I will talk about it a little bit tonight, and just some of the things I'm doing. Watching a show called Love, Death, and Robots. It's amazing. Yes. Yes, John Skull. It is amazing. Love, Death, and Robots is wonderful. So, yeah, and I think it keeps getting more wonderful the longer you watch it. So, yeah, good call out for a great show. So here we are with this scene that I've been working on. And I've mentioned this before. If you're a repeat offender, I don't want to bore you, but for anybody who's joining me for the first time tonight, this is a scene that I've done that's based on specific models. One of them is, I've changed it. I'm not doing it verbatim, but I've used inspiration from Avatar, which is a character from the 70s animated film Wizards by Ralph Bakshi, which I was a big fan of. So use that as sort of a starting point. And then here's another image. And I really wanted to do something bouncy and fun and floppy. And so the goal has been to demonstrate overlap and follow through. So I'll talk about that a little bit today. But really, we're going to just do cleanup for most of the day today. So, hey, JD. Cool, yes, I agree. I hope that more episodes come to life because it's great. And then here we've got Mickey Mouse, who's also a big influence on the scene that I'm working on today, where you get the robe and the gloves and big floppy feet and the pointy cap, wizard's cap. So that was sort of the influence that I had. And then here I will show you the original animation that I did several years ago. This is how it used to look. And so I'm revisiting it and just wanted to spruce it up a little bit while I'm on live stream. And one of the things, if you want to know what's been going on with this scene, one of the things that I was never happy with about it was the wizard's cap, the way it should be more floppy. And it ends up being kind of stiff and rigid in this version. And then the same with the base of the character's robe. And even the arms of the robe, they could, I always thought that they could be a little better. And then the feet, I was never really happy with the way they kind of just morph into place. And then also the beard. So all of these were opportunities. I thought, oh, it's a good opportunity to go in and revisit this and do something else with it, or at least tweak it and finish it off the way I wish I would have at the time. So that was the original animation. Now I'll turn that off and I'll play the current version of the animation the way it's looking today. So hopefully you can see that it's smoother and there's a lot more overlap and follow through on the gloves. On the sleeves, and also on the back of the hat, on the base of the cloak that the guy's wearing, and then on the beard. And also too, I kind of played around with the feet, and so I made it so that when he moves, he doesn't just slide, he actually lifts up his foot a little bit. I'm still noticing some things with the beard. It's changing volume a lot. It's getting really long. And then also the sleeves. Oh, thanks, they're nice and sleevey. Yeah, that is a technical term. The sleeves are hopefully nice and sleevey now. So some of these things, this is naughty, I shouldn't do this, but I'm probably just going to fix some of those things up that I just mentioned in the cleanup process and just fix them up as I go. In the interest of just sort of finishing this off. It's approximately, I don't even know how many drawings it is. It's about half. So I'm guessing it's around 30 drawings that I'm going to be doing. So it's daunting. It takes a while to do this. But meanwhile, if anybody's interested, we can discuss animation stuff. And I'll also be talking about the cleanup, but I won't be offended if anybody is interested in talking more about animation things and not necessarily just the techniques. But also too, if you're interested in this, if I scrub it slowly, you can see how I accomplished some of those things with the drawings. And then you can see how it's still in its very rough stage. So I'll be cleaning some of that stuff up with the cleanup pass. You know what, I'm just going to do this first before I even get into it. I'm going to just do some more scrubbing away at the rough animation, because it'll just make my life, once it gets to the cleanup pass, it'll make my life so much easier if I deal with some of this stuff. You can see I was already starting to clean it up, but I'm like, I'll just take a step back and make sure that I'm really, really happy with the rough, because again, cleanup, I like to just set it and forget it. I like to kind of put my brain into autopilot mode, and I won't be able to do that if I'm still animating. And so I'm just going to fix some of this stuff up that I know is going to be an issue later, and then I won't have to worry about it anymore. So hope everybody out there is doing well tonight. If you have anything that you'd like to discuss, if you have any questions or thoughts, I'm all yours. This is your opportunity to ask me specific things about things that you are specifically interested in. I know some of you like to talk about your favorite shows, and I'm always excited to talk to you about your shows, especially when I find that there are things I don't know about, works, games, shows, movies, anything that people are interested that I'm not really aware of. That's always fun for me to get caught up with what's going on out in the real world too. So, all right, some good places on the internet for networking apps, sites, and sources. So some good places. Well, you're probably already on them as far as the platforms go. So Facebook, Instagram, Vimeo, Twitter, obviously. So all these places are places where you can connect with other people. Then you just have to be kind of creative about how you find what you're looking for. I found one just the other day that was kind of interesting to me based on animated films. And actually, no, it wasn't animated films, but I found something yesterday that was based on films that I like, which are kind of obscure and odd films. Never thought to even look it up before. So I think I typed in weird films or something like that into Facebook search, and I ended up coming up with a great resource. Then another one was the music I used to listen to, the techno music. There was a radio station that used to play it. It was called Mars FM, and I never thought, oh wow, why don't you just type in Mars FM and see if anybody's actually posting about any of this stuff? And of course they were. So you just have to be a little bit creative. I don't know that there's anything definitive. There are so many places out there right now to hook up with people and get online. And so my recommendation is, for Drawn Skull, my recommendation is just do some searches, get hooked up with one of these groups. I belong to, I think, 2D animation, classic animation, and then some groups that are related to work, so not everybody can get on those. One is like an alumni for Disney sort of thing, so not everyone could jump on that one. But what I find is the more you hook up with groups, the more you find out about other groups. And so my recommendation, in lieu of being able to say, ooh, this is the best one of all, is to just get on into some groups, anything. And then that leads to something else and leads to something else. It's like anything else. Networking is about connections. This connects to that, connects to that. So just start somewhere and then see what happens and see if that leads to the stuff that you really want. Well, hello, Oscar. Nice to have you back. Thank you for dropping by, and thank you. Glad that you're here. And again, tonight is kind of open call for questions and comments, because I'm just going to be doing finishing off this scene. I've still got some tweaks that I decided to do to this, but just tying it down, getting it ready for cleanup, the cleanup pass. Looking at it again, I saw that I could probably do more with the sleeves than I was actually doing, so I'm going to just finish off a little bit with the sleeves and then adjust the beard so it's not quite as long as it was. And then I'm going to start cleaning this up, so I'm at your mercy if you guys want to talk about anything or ask anything. Now is a great time. Or like I said, if you want to talk about the things you like, this is a great time to do that too. As you can see, we have some friends in the chat room. And so for Drawn Skull, guess what? This is a nice place to network. I've had people connect on here before and talk about what they're doing and how they're accomplishing freelance. And so I consider this a resource. Anytime you've got people who are communicating about stuff that they're interested in, then it's a networking opportunity. Aside from that, if I've talked about this before, if you're somebody who is still getting started in the business and you're looking for ways to improve your resume, one of the things that I recommend is places like Fiverr. Fiverr, if you go onto that website, you'll see people are offering their services for small amounts of money, which entices people who don't know anything about they sometimes don't even know what they want. They just are like, I think I want some animation, or I want a title. And so you set yourself up on Fiverr and say, hey, I'll do something for you for a small amount of money, and then for a little bit more, you get extra perks, and you can get more things done, but it'll cost you if you want something personalized, or the sky's the limit. And so I'd recommend that as a resource for people who are trying to get started and they're building up a resume. And then guess what? Once you've done a few of these jobs, you can say, hey, I do this for a living. I'm actually getting paid to do this. And then you'll also have a reel of work that shows that you actually work and you make money off of your whatever it is you like to do. So I can't stress that enough. It's the same thing, not to go there, but when I've had some friends who were having problems with credit cards, and so they had to end up going bankrupt, and then that made their credit go kaplooey. And so what one of the things you can do is either you can't get a credit card for whatever reason, or your credit's bad or something, is they have these credit cards where you pay yourself and you borrow from yourself, and it's a way of establishing credit while you're not actually borrowing money from anybody, and it's just a way of getting the credit score, even though you don't actually technically have a credit card. Well, the same thing with doing work on something like Fiverr, is you're building up work. You can officially say you're paid as an artist or whatever it is you want to do. And then you can hand your resume or reel to someone and say, hey, look, this is all stuff that I actually got paid to do. So that's one of the benefits of a thing like Fiverr, but there are other things out there too. But anyway, since you asked, that's a resource that I think is really solid, and it's been around for a while. It's probably getting oversaturated now too. I haven't looked at it lately, but it's definitely something to think about. So we got to look at that work. I had a nice sneer on the hand for that hammer. Grab some fast. Actually saw it in the Genie. Yeah. So so this is addressing your comment, Oscar. Is I've talked about this before, but in case I've never mentioned it, one of the reasons I wanted to show this scene was for the exaggeration. And you're absolutely right when you say when there's fast action, it's good to use something like this, this exaggeration, because animation isn't necessarily set up in a way that you can do smears like you'd see in live action. I always do this, make people nuts. But if I go like this with my hand, like you can't record that fast enough. Maybe if you had 60 frames a second or something, then that's another story. But in general, it's really hard to relay that fast of an action. And so animators back in the 30s and 40s, when animation was really just getting started, they would do these exaggeration poses. Well, first they tried smear frames, which I think are still used. So I would add, like little pieces of the hand and then draw lines that kind of, extend the hand in a way that makes it look like a motion blur. But if I play this for you at speed, odds are you're going to be able to see those lines. And so today we've kind of gotten away from that a little bit. So I don't know if you can see that, but if you're playing this at speed, you can see that frame that has those little blur lines on it. And so we don't really need to do stuff like that anymore. There are ways of doing things digitally. Certainly in CG animation, we would do things digitally, but for 2D animation purposes, probably your best, well, depending on the character of the scene. In this case, I wanted it to look very floppy Mickey Mouse and very old school 2D, a lot of squash and stretch, a lot of bounce to it, and a lot of exaggeration. And so that's why I added these exaggeration poses here. I always tell this story just to, I don't know, I guess pat myself on the back or something, but I was on a film called Over the Hedge years and years ago, and one of the tasks that I was assigned initially was there's a squirrel, and it was really crazy, and it was bouncing all around and doing nutty stuff. And they said you need to do kind of a zip from here to the other side of the screen. And so for that character, I started with the character over here. I'll turn this, do this out here. I started with the character on one side of the screen. Just get rid of, well, actually, sorry, I'm going to just create an empty drawing here so I can draw this and not have anything in the way. So I started out with the character over here on this side of the screen. And it was a squirrel. Obviously, I didn't draw it, but it was standing there like that, and its little hands. Oh my God, this music! Hold on, I'm just gonna cancel out some of this. The music I use is free, and it just kind of pops up periodically, and sometimes it gets a little bit crazy. Anyway, so so the squirrel was over here on the other side of the screen and crazy, and then it had to be over here. I don't remember in the scene if it was actually looking at you know, pointing the other direction or not, but it basically had to zip from one side of the screen to the other. And so I had it go down into, obviously, a pose like this where it's running. We didn't really have the ability to squash and stretch characters back then. And so so I just stretched it out like physically as best I could with its legs, and you know, nailed its ears back against its head, and then stretched the arms as far out as they would go, and then the feet out as far as they would go. And it, you know, it's a pretty stretchy character just the way it was designed, but you couldn't physically squash and stretch it. And then once I had this pose, then I went in and had the character go down like so out of that initial pose. And this is where, you know, I mean, these are probably what my thumbnails look like for the scene, something like this anyway. But had the character going down into a pose so that it followed an arc like that, and then the tail followed the arc like that. So when I drew the tail in, it, you know, followed through, tracing the entire shape of the original pose. So instead of motion blur and instead of even exaggeration, I just had that tail following the pose. And then same thing when I got over to this side, it was contorted and twisted and really warped so that it looked like it was coming into this pose. And then once it got to that pose, I went over a little bit, just a tiny bit, and then of course the tail was all offset by a couple frames, but I went over it and then went smack down right into its final pose, so it kind of froze there. So it came up, it came down like that, and then the tail just kind of got caught up. But what I was doing here was trying to replicate exaggeration and smears by using the tail, by stretching the tail out, so the tail with these dotted lines, that was each of the poses, you know, where the tail would be positioned, so that when it played at speed, it would have this nice flow to it that would emulate exaggeration. So anyway, I'll just get rid of all this junk. You can just look at these thumbnail drawings. They're not that nice, but you get the idea. It just started with a single pose, so that would have been pose 1. This would have been, I don't know, pose 7 or something. And then halfway through that, this would have been about pose 4. I guess it'd be a key. And then the extremes, which would be really, really fast, would have to depend on following this first pose, the one I just kind of shaded in, and so that there's a nice arc. And that led to it looking like it was zipping from one side of the frame to the other without it being too robotic and too mechanical, too stroby, I guess, for want of a better word. It had a nice little zip to it. And the director, I believe the animation director on that, one of them, there were 2. One of them was, I believe, named Carrie. I cannot believe I don't remember the name. It has been a few years. But he said, now that's how you do a zip, man. That's how you should do it. And I felt really proud of that. I thought that was a triumph for me, at least, because I was new on the film and I hadn't done a lot on it yet. So anyway, so that's just a little bit of a talk about how you could use exaggeration to emulate something like that, to emulate something that's moving too quickly. As someone said earlier in the chat, you can see, yeah, it was moving too fast, so you couldn't see it. I can't turn on motion blur on 2D animation like you can in CG animation. So how am I going to deal with it? Am I going to do exaggerations like this? Or am I going to try to do some, you know, tracers, for want of a better word, like that? Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson kind of go on and on about that a little bit in The Illusion of Life. So even they said, you know, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to have, here's my hand. You know, this was the Mickey hand that I was doing. You know, here it is in this pose, and then it goes all the way over here to this pose, or something like that. And I've only got one drawing in between them. Well, what do I do with it? Do I draw, you know, all these tracer lines like you might do if you're doing a still comic book frame, Or do I do some very exaggerated thing where I'm keeping the arc, which is here, and zoom in on that a little bit, keeping the arc, which is, you know, something like this, but exaggerating those frames, the drawing in between, so that you don't really see the exaggeration, you just see the arc. And hello, peep outside. Welcome. Anyway, so that's what I was doing earlier with the wizard hand. I'll just leave that up. But that's what I was doing earlier with the wizard hands here, is I was making them longer. And the point of it is if I turn on onion skin, let's see if I can line this up a little bit, but you should be able to see that there's an arc that you can trace from one side to the other. From this point here, that's one of the fingers, that's this hand here, to this hand here, and so that's the other point. And then it has to be a nice clean arc from one side to the other. Not doing that too nicely, it doesn't look too clean tonight, does it? But you get the idea. Probably loosen that arc up just a wee little bit. But it follows that arc and creates the equivalent of motion blur, even though it's all just hand drawn. So did a lot of that in this scene, and did it specifically to point out that process, that was the goal, was to try and point that out. Oh good, thanks. Glad if that helped you understand any of this a little bit better. I can't stress enough that arcs are what make or break good animators. The amateurs are the ones who don't really understand arcs, and the ones that do understand arcs, that's how their stuff ends up looking so smooth and clean, and it has that kind of satisfying feel to it. Like I said, I'm still fixing some of this stuff, but so let's fix. Yeah, so I kind of ran into some problems here with the sleeves. They just weren't long enough in some parts, so I'm just going through and kind of fixing some of that stuff up. But the conversation started with the idea of, you know, how do I show things that are moving too quickly? And one of the ways I did that was with all this exaggeration. So good question, and glad you asked that one. That's something that's easy to forget about, unfortunately. And I forget it every now and then. And something that happens, you guys will probably find once you get further on in your careers, or maybe you've already found it to be a case, is you can not know what you know. You don't even think about all the things that you're actually really well versed in. One of those things is if you've been watching a lot of shows or a lot of games, then you probably have a language that you already understand a lot about how things are supposed to look. And based on whatever it is that you've been watching in terms of cartoons or games or cinematics or whatever it is that you like to watch, because you've been watching it over and over again, you probably have a language of how things are supposed to look, at least in animation. And the only problem with that comes is when you rely on that too heavily, and so you spend all your time making it look like something that's very stylized. And I always talk about this on these Twitch streams, is you need to go back to the real world as far as how things look, and periodically remind yourself of how things look in the real world, because your brain lies. It picks and chooses the things that you like, and it tosses out the things you don't like. And so you're only ever, sometimes you're only ever looking at things in the way that you feel comfortable looking at them. And you really do just have to see things objectively and look at real life motion. Nowadays, there are so many resources for things moving in slow motion that you can use as a reference. And so I definitely want to check out some of that stuff and get used to the way things look in the real world, because again, your brain, it just doesn't tell the truth. And poor brain. Which doesn't mean it's not that we're not equipped to do that. We just have to think about it. We have to make a deliberate choice and go, well, I'm going to look at this the way it really looks in the real world, and ignore my instincts that are, oh, it goes faster, it goes slower. So let's see how this looks, see if it's getting any better. keeping volume is also a problem which many young animators face in their animation. Well, yeah, that's a really good point. So Oscar, thank you for bringing that up. Keeping volume is a hard thing, and that's kind of what I'm dealing with here with this robe. With the arms, was I began to see that the rope was just too short, and so I'm going in and working with that right now and trying to see how I can fix it up. Fortunately, on Toon Boom, one of the nice things about this program, well, a lot of programs I guess, but is you can cut and paste, and so you can compare sizes by cutting and pasting the original shape and then measuring it against the other ones. So for example, I could take this hand and I can copy and paste this hand. So just go edit, copy, and then move over to, let's say, a hand over here, and just compare sizes. So now if I take this and I place it over the top of it, I can look at the fingers, I can rotate this, and just kind of compare sizes and see, does it actually measure up, or is it gotten too big or too small, and then make adjustments related to that. But so that's one thing I like with the digital world is you can copy and paste things physically that way, and you could just do that on every single frame. I've already kind of done it, so I'm not going to go back and do that again, but it's definitely a way that you can keep volumes intact. Another thing that you can do is just make sure that you come up with a model sheet before you actually get in and start drawing. If you do that, then chances are you'll be able to keep your stuff on model. So one of the things that we did a lot when I was working professionally on 2D films is we'd spend a lot of time drawing the character before we actually animated it. And I found that that was a really essential part of keeping things on model and making sure that the volume stayed intact. So we would have drawings of the characters' faces turned 360, and we could actually use those. And so again, if you do your own model sheets, you'll find that you can actually use those drawings later to keep your own volumes intact. But and it just takes a little bit of extra thought and a little bit of extra time and planning to make sure that you keep that you have that stuff prepared in advance. That's the secret. It's just that you spend a little bit of time in advance, and then you'll have it when you need it. When you get into the real heavy animating, where you don't want to, when you're animating motion, you don't want to spend too much time thinking, oh, is this completely on model? Is this completely working? If you're spending too much time worrying about, like for example, the structure of this dude's face, I didn't spend too much time thinking about, well, how thick is the character's nose? I just generally tried to lay it in. And then the idea is when I go in and do the cleanup pass, which I'm going to start tonight, then all that stuff, I can address things like that then. Ideally, you'd go do what I'm kind of doing now, which is a tie down pass, where I'm not actually cleaning it up. I'm actually just sort of tweaking things that I know are wrong, so that when I do cleanup, I can make some calls a little bit easier. So right now, again, I'm just extending his sleeves a little bit. They were getting a little bit too diverse from section to section, so I'm elongating them and making them a little bit thicker. And then when I go back and I clean this up, put a nice clean line on it, hopefully it'll all come together. Let's fix that one. But yeah, I mean, everybody, that's the nice thing is everybody is learning all the time. So don't feel bad if you're like, well, I have certain things that I'm better at, certain things I'm just not that good at. That's always the case. That's the case with everybody who's ever animated in their entire careers. So you're in excellent company if there are certain things that you just don't have down. I have a book of drawings. It's probably mean that I kept this, but it was all done in good spirit, and it was mostly because when you're working on a production, and you're doing many hours, you just look for ways to make yourself laugh. So me and some friends, we took drawings of Frollo, a character I worked on in the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and animators' drawings and cleanup drawings, including mine, that just didn't quite cut it. That they weren't quite up to snuff, and probably wouldn't be featured in the making of books, the art of whatever books that they used to do for these films. So I kept a collection of those, and what it was just an opportunity for some of us to, like I said, blow off steam, but also it was an opportunity for us to examine that, you know, everybody's working at a different pace, and we're not all experts right out of the gate. In fact, nobody is. And so it was kind of fun just to see that, you know, everybody is learning and everybody's making mistakes, and go easy on yourself and go easy on other people when they're not cutting it at the actual professional level every single minute of the day. But as far as, do you need to know Toon Boom? I don't, you know, people ask me this all the time. Is Toon Boom the ultimate program? Is that the one that everyone should know? And amongst my friends in the social networking groups I belong in, there's always the question of, well, do you want to do Toon Boom, or do you want to do TV Paint, or what's the best one? What's the one that I should really invest in? My understanding is Toon Boom is not cheap, and so are you going to spend your life savings on something and then you find out you don't even like it, or it's really hard to learn? Of course, you could always come to CG Spectrum and we will teach you, but you know, that's a very legitimate concern. I'm always trying to find ways to do things on the cheap, including my animation. And so you have to think about it. You can't just go for whatever is the latest. I'm really big on not doing technology chasing. So you're always constantly chasing what's the latest and greatest software. At a certain point, you just need to commit to a software and just do it. You know, just go for it and say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to learn. For me, it was Maya. Turned out that was probably a good one to learn because it's still kind of an industry standard. But you know, back when I was learning it, it was expensive and you couldn't get it unless you paid for it. Now you can get the student version of it. So there are ways around everything. And, you know, obviously if you join a class of some kind, you know, you'll have access to the program as a part of taking that class. So you also have to pay for the class, but you may find that that's how I got around Maya when I was learning it back in the early 2000s, was I would take a class at College of the Canyons. I think it cost $30, maybe less than that. Maybe it was $10, I don't really remember. And that was a way for me to get access to a very expensive program, was to take this class. It was an intro, and I already knew everything about intro that I really needed to know. I mean, it's always good to take more and learn more, but I was confident that I knew enough about the intro stuff of Maya that I didn't really need an intro class, but I definitely benefited from having access to the program. So if you took a class where they give you Toon Boom, where you're using that, like CG Spectrum, then you get the program. That's part of the deal. Not forever, but you get it while you're working on in the class. So, you know, stuff like that, stuff to think about. What type of animation could be done in Toon Boom? Is it all vector and puppet? No, I'm working in it right now. So for Drawn Skull, I'm working in Toon Boom as we speak, and as you can see, my line is really, really rough. I'm doing really loose drawings. This is called bitmap drawing that I'm doing. So that's how I'm getting this really loose, kind of almost charcoal pencil line that you don't get when you do vectors. And when I do the cleanup pass any minute now, as soon as I'm done with all this, when I do that, then that's when you'll be seeing the vector line that's much more clean. And so you can see how loose I'm doing this with the sleeve. I just want to make sure that I'm getting the animation right, and I don't think I am, so I'm going to probably fix some of this stuff. Also might be missing a drawing between here and here. It might be worthwhile going in and doing one more drawing in there, but I'll play it at speed and I'll see how it looks before I commit to anything at all. It's moving so fast it almost doesn't matter, but I can see now that that sleeve is definitely not working, so I got to fix that up. and I'll be much happier if I could do that. So anyway, what type of animation can be done in Toon Boom? So you can do anything, vector, puppet, and hand-drawn. So it's a great program for doing that. We are actually rolling out a new program soon where we focus entirely on puppet animation. That's going to happen at the beginning of November. So we're rolling out, and as far as I know, you don't need to have taken the first one in order to take that one. So if you're solely interested in doing the kind of puppet rigged stuff that you see often in TV shows, that might be a worthwhile class to take. My understanding is, I know for a fact that you probably would want to take the intro one first, because we assume you know certain things when you take the cutout and rigged one. That's part of the deal, is we understand that you already kind of have an understanding of animation, and now you're going to do it in a specific way. But as far as I know, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm the head of the department, so it's we're taking all comers, and anybody who has an interest in this stuff, we'll get you up to speed, and we'll get you going as fast as we possibly can. And the question, Oscar, that you asked earlier, does Toon Boom clean your line work? Well, you can clean your line work in Toon Boom. It doesn't do it for you, but that's something that I'm going to do later, is actually clean stuff up in Toon Boom. I'll be doing that here in just a minute, as soon as I'm happy with this sleeve, which kind of got away from me here. It's sometimes difficult to animate when I'm talking. But what program is it? The new program? I believe it's called Advanced. The website, I think it's already available if you go on CG Spectrum, but I think that they're calling it Advanced Animation. Don't quote me on that. There's been some talk about it still, but it will be officially rolled out soon, and then you can get more information about it from there. But that's what the new program will be focused on, is doing puppets and rigs. And you'll actually have a rig in the class that you get to work with, and you can make it animate, and then we show you how to make your own, but it's not the easiest thing in the world. So we encourage people to try it and try animating with our rig that we provide, and then you can go from there. So yeah, if that's something that you're interested in, you probably want to check that out. All right. So let's see, the last time the sleeve looked good was around frame 33. And then the last time it looked good on the other end was 45. So I'm now going to try to animate this thing straight ahead, so it goes from 33 to 45. And in between's a little bit nicer than I was doing before. So speaking of programs, yeah, Flipbook. Yeah, that's a nice one. And animation paper, never even heard of it. That's great. Yeah, so you're not confined nowadays. There are so many cool things out there, to listen to. There's so many different programs out there. It's changing all the time. So it's just a matter of finding one that you're comfortable with. And I say this all the time, but just don't let that stop you. Don't let not having the perfect program in the world prevent you from practicing your craft. The worst thing that can happen is to sit around and say, well, I don't have all the materials I need, so I guess I can't work. And I always talk about how I started out with flipbooks, made my first film entirely out of flipbooks, because I said, well, I got enough equipment here now that I can make a whole short film. And so I just did it. And there are a lot of things I did wrong, obviously, and would differently now, but I still ended up with a short film. And I'm still very proud of it. I still think it works. It's funny. People laugh when they see it. And, it may not be the most beautiful thing in the world. In fact, I know for a fact it's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but for what I was able to do with it at the time, I accomplished something. I accomplished my mission, which is I wanted to prove that I could make a short film. And there is no excuse whatsoever. I'm going to say this with my pencil raised and be very adamant and say there is no excuse for anybody out there right now to not be trying to make their own projects or their own short films or their own live action or whatever you're into. You just absolutely have no excuses not to do it anymore, because there are so many resources. You can make a film with your phone. You know, just go on record as saying that you could do it. There was, I don't know if you've heard of this film, but there was a film that somebody made at Walt Disney World. They actually made a film. I'm pretty sure they made it with their phone, and I've seen parts of it. I didn't think it was a good movie, but boy, they certainly were able to do it. And it's this horror film. I think it's called something like Inside the Magic Kingdom or Magic. And I believe Disney finally just said, you know what, we aren't really worried about this. This isn't going to compete with us in any way, shape, or form. So they let it be released. And I think I saw it on Netflix. And I believe it's a horror film. And the only thing I saw was, I think, Tinkerbell came to life and was this evil pixie or something like that. And I thought the idea was great. It just, the film itself, that didn't move me in any way, shape, or form. I wasn't really that interested. It probably would have been if I was younger, but when I watched it, I just thought, yeah, I got other things I want to watch. But the point is, there's no excuse not to be able to make your own projects and do your own thing. If that's what you're interested in, then you should be doing it right now. And then once you've done some stuff like that, then you can prove to somebody that you actually have the ability to do it. And then maybe they'll hire you to do it. We've talked about that a lot. It's like, well, how do I get those jobs where I'm actually making movies? And the answer is start making movies and prove that you can do it, and prove you can do it on a budget, and then you'll probably have a job for the rest of your days. But nobody is going to hand you a job and say, here, you look like you're talented and you look like you're ambitious and you want it really badly. If that were the case, I would have gotten those jobs, and my friends would have gotten them, because that's what we had when we first started out. And we realized really quickly that nothing comes to you when you just talk about it, when you just talk about all the things that you want to do. And it's good to talk about all the things you want to do. That's not the point. The point is at a certain point you gotta just that old expression, show me the money, or whatever. You got to prove yourself. You have to prove that you can do these things, and only then will you have a chance of giving an opportunity to do it in the real world. And one of the reasons one of the reasons I got my first shot in animation, I was hired to be the driver, but I did have a reel of short films, my one that I made on my flip book, and other things. And I asked later, I said, well, did that influence you at all when you saw my reel? And they all said, well, it was kind of demented. I mean, but we thought, well, the guy's got a personality, he's got a vision, and we know he can be better. He's coming right out of college with no experience, and so we'll give him a shot. And that's how I got my first shot. And then once I was in the studio, I was able to assimilate everything better there, and then I got up to speed. But until then, I had to prove myself somehow, so I proved myself by making a short film out of flip books. And it didn't get me the job as an animator, but it certainly helped my cause when it came time to say, well, who are the ones that are actually really excited about animation? That proved my case for me. So got some comments here. To learn all animation because I want to bring my ideas to life from many different styles and many different types of animation. Yeah, so Drawn Skull, I think we've actually kind of thought about this one before. It's like, well, what can you do? And you've got all these great ideas. Well, the thing is start making them. Start right now, and start having fun with these ideas that you have, and start trying to bring them to life. And then just see what happens. The worst that can happen is maybe your ideas don't come to fruition. In my case, there's nothing to me more sad than an idea that doesn't get finished, that was started and then just kind of dies on the vine. That to me is the saddest thing that can happen with a project. So you know, go out and just do it. I'm just kind of looking at this and seeing if I'm a little happier with the sleeves now. It's still not thrilled, but it's I think it's better. So I'm just gonna check the volumes for the beard and make sure it doesn't get too long, because it looked like it was getting a bit long. So I'm gonna do what I was actually just talking about a minute ago and look for examples of where the beard looks like it's about right. So that looks like that should be how long the beard is, and then I'm gonna copy and paste it onto other frames and just compare and just kind of go through the different frames and look at it and make sure that it didn't get too long. Like that one, it looks like it's too long. So just kind of compare. Yep, it's just the edge of it. So maybe I can just cut and paste the edge of it and bring it back up a little bit. And then that will make this shorter. It's going to be hidden behind his arms anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's perfect, but I definitely want to make sure that the thing is shorter. It's great advice for people starting their careers right now. Good. Nice to know. Thanks, people outside. So John Scully, you want to finish your BFA in film and to get your BFA in film production diplomas at CGS. And great. I think that's great. Really nice. And doing live action stuff and animation. Yeah, that's the idea. Just keep doing it. I always talk about Mike Mitchell, who I started out with in my career when I was just a lowly in-betweener, cleanup person. And he was always making videos at a time when video wasn't what it is today. Back then, video was very clunky and very bulky, and it was hard to make your own short films. But boy, he did it anyway. And what he would do is just shoot films over and over and over, just all these short projects that he did, and eventually got himself a job directing animation, and then went from directing animation to you know, doing TV, I guess. Basically I left that out. Going from TV, and then he went to feature films, and then he did a live action film, and it's like, you know, the sky's the limit once you've proven you can do it. My experiences were that if you did one film, they'd give you another one. So I worked on some films that weren't that good. I'm not going to say what they are, but and not as an animator, but I would do secondary work, Xerox, sell Xerox and checking and things like that, on films that maybe weren't top drawer, if that's the word. But what I saw was these people who made these films, even though the films weren't really that good and they didn't do that well financially, but they got to make another one after that because they proved they could make a film. And sometimes that's all you really need to be able to do is prove that you have the ability to make a film. And if you can do one, then you can do another. Despite the fact that I know a lot of animation directors who, you know, are clamoring for work from time to time, I also know it's not something everybody can do. They don't have the temperament, they don't have the patience, they don't have the mind to be able to do every single task on the job as good as anybody else on the production. I always talk about Life of Pi and how I had an animation director and he could do my job better than I could. It's just he simply had too many things to do. So he couldn't be an animator on the show, but he could have been, and could have done it as good or better than I did it. And so that's kind of what you need to be able to be as a director. So anyway, Mike Mitchell got his start in TV, and then he ended up doing everything. And then he ended up doing live action films and very successful CG animation films, for example, Trolls, Shrek. I don't know which one he did, to be honest. I haven't seen them all, but he did one of the Shrek sequels. And again, live action and CG animation both. So cool. So CG Spectrum site looks different. Did they update it? Yes, they did. They're rolling out new programs, new everything. So yeah, so they went through and they updated it a little bit, and yeah, and then they have a new class structure for some of the classes as well. So yeah, I'm glad you noticed. and I'm sure they're happy that you noticed as well. And so part of that, like I said, is now there's a different sort of a different layout to some of the classes, and not necessarily the same thing that we always did before. Now we're doing 1 terms, 2 terms, and 3 terms, as far as I know. That's kind of what the modus operandi was for setting up the new website, so that they could do multi-term classes in case you don't want to take the whole thing. So yeah, other than that, I haven't really spent a lot of time on the website. I just know it exists, and so I can't talk about it too much because I haven't delved into it all that much. But that is, yes, you're absolutely right. There's a new website, and hopefully it's nice. Let me finish this off here. Probably won't finish off this beard. I just needed to have one last frame that was nice, so that when I clean this up, I can use that as a reference, and then in between into it from earlier on in my scene. So I'll go back and check these. I'll probably just get rid of these beards, and then I will be ready to start cleaning it up. And hopefully the beard will look a little bit more. Shrek, a real legend. Nice. Yeah, so I was there for the first 2, I believe. I was there for the first 2. The first one was done, well, they were both done up at PEI. And I remember that Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was the head of the department, the head of the company, the DreamWorks feature animation, and he was very nervous because he hadn't had a lot of success with his 2D films, and he was worried that his sequel to Shrek was going to end up being the first sequel that didn't do very well. He was kind of at a low point, I gotta admit, which is funny. You don't think of CEOs of companies, creators of companies, being like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. That's what he said to us. And of course, the Shrek 2 came out and was bigger than any animated film that ever existed at the time, or something like that. I don't know how they measure these things. I don't know if that's really true. I know that Lion King was the grand champion for many, many years. It's unbelievable how much money that film made. But I don't know who finally unseated it. You can look that up probably on Box Office Mojo and see who finally took out Lion King. But then after a while, it was like, ooh, everything is better than the Lion King. Well, frankly, I think people still know the original animated Lion King film. I don't know that they know some of those films that unseated Lion King. It's like, you know, they always say too, it's like, how was it Gone with the Wind in modern day dollars? Well, it was as bigger than Titanic in modern day dollars, as far as people who saw it on the planet. So I don't know. I've lost track of what were the biggest animated films of all time. But yeah, Shrek did really well, and I was very happy for it because I liked it. I thought it was great. And then I left, kind of lost track of all that stuff. So John Scully, focusing on mostly horror, sci-fi, action, fantasy, epic, and a little bit of crime and thriller. Well, I think it's great that you're focusing on all those genres, and you know, why not combine them and make something cool? We are all anxiously awaiting someone to do something in the States that's a lot more, I guess you'd say, a lot more kind of anime style. I always talk about how I think it was Miyazaki was going to come to DreamWorks and do a film there, a sort of dystopian future film, and then it never happened, and boy, were we all crushed. That would have been just wonderful. So I'm still waiting for somebody. I think maybe Spider-Verse in some ways came close to an anime aesthetic, but I still don't, I mean, that wasn't an anime film by any stretch. You know, a film that has the same aesthetic physically as well as the storytelling. I'm still waiting for that to happen. I haven't seen it yet. So I'm going to add a little bit of overlap to this as long as I'm here. Why not? Just really go for it and try to make this as roby as possible, or sleevey, as I think JD said that, as sleevey as possible, but do it with the base of the robe. And you may notice that I'm not just drawing in betweens using the onion skin, but I'm actually going through and flipping it, playing it at speed every now and then. The only way you'll know if something is working is if you play it at speed. If it's not working that way, then All the best in-betweens in the world aren't going to help. And so you just play it at speed periodically and get a feel for how it's looking. And the animation teachers I used to work with, they would always tell me, you know, turn off your backlight. Don't always rely on tracing and matching shapes. At a certain point, you need to be able to draw while you're flipping and just lay lines in while you're just going back and forth and back and forth. And so speaking of volumes, they would say, you know, why don't you try animating the entire scene without your backlight on and see if you can match volumes just based on persistence of vision. As you're flipping through it, does it look right? And it was a really good exercise. It's kind of like in the original Star Wars when he makes him try to use the Force to battle the level of training, whatever it was. And you know, you do that sometimes in animation too, where it's like, well, do you actually understand form and volume, or are you just trying to copy shapes that you already know exist? So it's a good exercise. All right, it's probably went a little too far with this. It's morphing. You definitely don't want that. You don't want it to gradually slide into place. So I'm going to kind of undo what I was just working on and just let the robe sort of settle rather than try and have it go down and come back up again. I don't think it really matters. And if it does, again, I might try to accomplish that a little bit in the cleanup pass. Yeah, so I'll just leave it like that for now. So I think I'm ready to start cleaning up now. Cool, thanks, Oscar. It's a JD. Cavity Colors just released a collection of shirts and sweats for Halloween 4 through 6. Oh, sweet. Very, very cool. It's nice. And thanks for that tip. And how difficult is it for you to talk and draw and animate at the same time? So it isn't easy. And that's why I try to concentrate on just doing fairly simple things. And sometimes like this robe that I'm working on here at the end, and I'm not thrilled with it, but I can't really think about it while I'm animating. I can't really animate while I'm drawing. See, there you go. I can't really animate while I'm talking and you know, concentrating on other things as well. So I try to keep things simple. And then things like this, which is going to require a little bit more time and thought, I'll do that offline, and then when you see it next time, it'll be absolutely lovely and perfect. So yeah, that's a really good question. I try not to do anything that's too crucial when I'm doing live streams, but I also want to make it interesting so you guys can see the process as well as have conversations about this stuff. But now I'm going to go ahead and start cleaning this puppy up. I've already started, as I said. First thing I always do is I turn down my rough layer so it's a little bit lighter. So in this case, I'll probably knock it down to about 30 here. See what I'm doing? I'm just knocking it down, the opacity. So I'll turn it down to about 30, and then hit OK. And it doesn't do it immediately, but eventually it'll look lighter. So there you go. So it looks a little bit lighter. So I look forward to the new update. Cool. And then I've got other, I mean, if you ever come back for these, I've got other pieces that I'm working on. I don't know that it's a valuable thing to spend a lot of time doing cleanup here on the live streams, but it's certainly much easier to do cleanup than it is to do you know, the kind of thinking that it requires for rough animation. So it's best, I've found, I think it's easier to just work on something kind of mindless, which in this case is the cleanup for this scene. And then I can address specific questions or talk about things. And then it's funny, once you get into a groove, your mind just goes on autopilot and you don't really have to think anymore. At least with doing something like cleanup or fixing up a scene like I was doing a minute ago, where it's not something that requires you to be active. And that's the way it was when I was doing cleanup. And that's why I like the job so much. This is one of the best jobs in the world, because you would just sit back on autopilot and listen to stuff. We didn't have TED Talks back then, but the equivalent of TED Talks, you know, NPR radio or whatever. And then I liked listening to stories online. We didn't have online. I liked listening to books on tape, but I had all these radio dramas that were really cool. So it's TV for the brain, TV without images. These audio dramas I listen to. But that was the nature of cleanup. When I moved into doing animation, I found it was really complicated. It was hard to listen to stories because I needed to use my active brain and need to constantly be on. Specifically, if I was doing a dialogue scene, I'd have to make sure, the lip sync is working and that everything, the timing was working right. So it got really hard to listen to stories. But cleanup was great. Oh boy, it was just wonderful to get done with lunch and come back in and just kind of set your mind on autopilot, listen to a story and do some cleanup. And the hours had just passed by in a breeze. We were expected to do about one drawing an hour in cleanup. And so when you're done, you're done. And some people would say, well, I've done my 8 drawings for the day. Can I go home? Not quite outworked. If you were faster, then you could do more drawings, right? Yeah, cleanup was really a fun career. And I sometimes don't acknowledge the fact that it really did require skills. It's even like what I'm doing right now, it requires you to be able to basically draw on glass and draw like you would maybe detail a car. And not everybody can or wants to do it. And some people would try to do this sort of detail work and just be driven insane by it. And those of us who were cleanup people who did it all day for a living, we would just kind of laugh sympathetically at these people and I go, oh, yeah, I feel your pain. And then animators generally didn't like to do this stuff because it's just a different process. But as I've said many times, I like it all. I like every aspect of motion graphics. I like the detail work. I like the broad strokes work. And I'm a big fan of cleanup work as well, obviously. So this is where I'm doing things a little differently than Avatar. If I show those again, you'll see the difference. So look at the difference between Avatar's mustache. I'm trying to eliminate all the detail I can and just do something simple. So you can see there's a lot of detail work in his mustache and his beard, a lot of little fringy pieces. I'm just not messing with any of that. His hat is a little bit bent. There's a lot of line work. I just don't have the time or the energy to go through and do all that stuff. So you can see I've simplified this character. I'm not doing a vest. It is an avatar. I'm going to change colors and do something different. I'm just thinking maybe he's school of Avatar, like he's one of the other wizards that were in whatever company that Avatar kept. To be honest, the character of Avatar was based on a character called Cheech Wizard. Don't remember who did it. Don't remember who designed him. Maybe I'll bring that next time when I finish this off. I'll probably finish this off next time, next week. And then I'll show you Cheech Wizard and see how he's influenced. Drawn Skull, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street are your biggest horror influences, and I bet you have all the sequels, right? Night Sherry, thank you for stopping in and saying hello. But yes, so Drawn Skull, I would hope that you are well versed in all the sequels and know about them. I have a friend actually who has a friend who is kind of my friend peripherally, who did a long series documentary, long form series documentary on Halloween. That's, I don't know if it's out there or not. It should be to rent, or maybe it was on Netflix or Prime. I think it was on Prime. And so there are two of them. One is on the Halloween phenomenon. One is on the Friday the 13th. And it was great for me because I haven't seen all of them. And at this point, I just don't have the kind of leisure time to be able to check out all the sequels. I own all the Halloween ones because my friend gave them to me. But I just don't have the time to watch them all. And so this documentary was great. It would do little encapsulations of each one of the sequels. And so I got to kind of see the progression of both Halloween and Friday the 13th. My friend said that, since you brought it up, my friend said that they're going to re-release Halloween Friday the 13th 3 in 3D, an official 3D now. It was released in the blue, red, anaglyph glasses, whatever they call it, but they're actually going to release it in true 3D soon, even though the 3D TV thing didn't quite work out. So whenever he gets it, I'm gonna hopefully get to go over there and watch it. and see, I always liked that one. I thought the third one was fun, but I don't remember all of them, and I'm not well versed in all of the 3D and Halloween culture. And I like their most recent Halloween film with Jamie Lee Curtis. I thought that was great. I guess they're making a sequel, and so I know people who are very excited about that. I'm just, again, I'm getting a little old for stuff. You know, I don't know. It's not about age, but I just don't follow it like I used to. So yeah, love all the sequels, including Scream. Yes, fun. I met the writer, I think. Once, my friend of a friend introduced me to the writer, who was just hanging out in a club where we were one time, and we had a nice chat. It was fun. So the thing I always tell people is if you hang out in Hollywood long enough, you are bound to start meeting people. So speaking again of networking, oh my God. So speaking of networking, you just never know where you're going to meet people, but what happens is you start talking to people who like the same things you like. For example, Friday the 13th and Halloween and Scream. And based on that, you start to make more and more friends because you're all interested in the same things. So other things that I've enjoyed because I had friends who knew friends was I got to meet Linda Blair from The Exorcist, because my friend's friend knew her, and she was at a screening, I don't know, 7 years ago, I think. And she was charging for pictures, and my friend, well, he's like, well, I know the person who's kind of here with her, and I think we still had to pay money, but we got to hang out with her a little bit, and she was cool. And that just happened, you know, I don't follow things like that, but it happened because my friend does, and he moves in those circles. And as a result, when the party comes to town, he's the first one to know about it. It's also, if you're interested in Friday the 13th, I got to meet Adrienne Lyne, and she and I had a great talk because she is based out of Oregon, and that's where I'm from. So she wanted me to talk about Oregon. I guess she moved there, or I don't know what this, I don't remember. Again, this is like 7 years ago, but my friend is really chummy with her, and so they always talk about wine because she sells wine now. But imagine, if you will, I'm getting to sit next to Adrienne. Why did I say Adrienne Lyne? That's not her name. That's the director. Adrienne. This is what happens when I'm doing live streams. I can't remember names. I don't remember names even when I'm not streaming. But the one who survives, surely you must know her name. And I know it, just not when I'm talking like this. But she's the one who survives the first Friday the 13th, and then shows up briefly in the second one, and is immediately killed off, which nobody was thrilled about. Anyway, so I got to sit with her and watch Friday the 13th in a theater, and sit right next to her, and I'm looking at the screen, looking at her, looking at the screen, looking at her, and going, wow, I never thought that would happen. And I was a big fan of the original from when I was a teenager, and it premiered on Showtime for the very first time. I always tell the story of I've been watching it, and on a stormy night, the very first time, in the doors of our house, we had double doors, and they flew open and scared me to death as I'm sitting here watching this scary movie. Of course, by the time I saw it in the theater with, boy, it's making me crazy. I can't remember her name. I should look it up. Or maybe you guys have already pointed it out. Yeah, it was just absolutely crazy to be watching Friday the 13th for the very first time, and then have the doors fly open. So JD, your buddy Justin, yeah, it's Justin. I think that his name is Justin, the guy that I know, who worked on the Friday the 13th docs. And it's, yeah, Never Sleep Again. Well, maybe it isn't Justin. I don't remember who it is. If he's the editor, I'm not sure if I know. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you probably know the same people. 2 sequels for Halloween: Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. Adrienne King, thanks, JD. Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at these comments. Yeah, so Adrienne King. Sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. But yes, so we got to hang out with her and before the screening, and then we sat with her, and she was going on about Oregon. Sweetest person I've ever met, and I've met a lot of people who've worked on movies like this, and she was one of the coolest. I think JD, I've already told you about Rob Bottin walking through haunted houses at Not Scary Farm, and he's talking to me about the Thing and the Howling and the Fog and telling me stories, and even King Kong and other things while we're walking through haunted houses at Not Scary Farm. Talk about the geek dream come true. Your goal is to make a whole universe surrounding Michael Myers, Krueger, Jason in the same universe. Oh, that'd be fun. So I always say, like, don't wait to do it. Do it now while you've got the idea. I believe there's somebody who's made movies based on IPs that already existed on YouTube. I saw, I think it was maybe the Cinema Snob or somebody who was talking about a film that's not officially in the IP universe, but just did it anyway, made their own kind of fan version of this stuff. And right now, well, no, you don't want to take stuff that's been copyrighted, and you don't want to get in trouble, obviously. But by the same token, the world has become such a big place. You never really know, like, how are they ever going to find out that you did it in the first place? And that's what I'm saying about that movie with the phone that was made on a phone at Disney World. They found out about it, but they didn't care because it didn't have anything to do with the Disney company, and they didn't see it as a threat. So go out and make it. But if the sacrifice is too big, then you're probably going to risk losing that project at some point, because you'll get sued or you'll get in trouble one way or another if you use other people's characters. I had a friend who sculpted the Bruce Timm characters, so it was Poison Ivy, Catwoman, and Batgirl. I think those are the Bruce Timm. Remember, it was Harley Quinn was one of them. So I don't know who they all were, but Harley Quinn was for sure, and I think Poison Ivy. The Bruce Timm versions, he sculpted them and taught himself to sculpt and made a trio, big sculpture. It was about this big. Sent it overseas. I'm not going to say where, but sent it overseas to get it duplicated so he could give them out as to friends and family, and found that they were on YouTube being sold for $2,000 a pop by the company that was supposed to be making them. So, and he could do nothing because it wasn't his IP. It wasn't. He wasn't even supposed to be doing it in the first place, right? But I mean, I hope he got his copies of it. Maybe he just he was pretty sour about it. Maybe he forgot all about it eventually. But that's the danger when you're working with someone else's IP, is you run the risk that at a certain point, if it's successful, they can easily say to you, well, we're going to take that. Thank you. Great project, great money that you made off of it. Well, we'll take it. And so you want to do it legit, you're going to have to get the cooperation of the studio and everything. And I think they ran into some of that when they were doing Freddy versus Jason. That's why it took a long time. Or was it Alien versus Predator? One of those, it was taking them forever to do it because they just had to get all the clearances from everyone. Otherwise, they would have done it a lot sooner, probably. But you guys probably know more about that than I know. The slasher verse with Chucky, Scream, Leatherface, yeah. And then the Jeepers Creepers. Yeah, it's fun. I know a lot of people would really love to see stuff like that. I was really excited about Ready Player One because it was going to introduce a bunch of kind of mixed up worlds, but I don't know that turned out quite right. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I wasn't really impressed with the movie itself. And I've had other people, we've talked about it on here, that said that the book was a lot better. But I was interested from the mashup standpoint. I'm always really excited about when they take characters from other universes and mix and match them and make something new out of it and have fun with it. So yeah, go for it. You should go out there and make it happen. I'm spending a little bit of extra time here working on this foot because I'm going to copy and paste this foot over and over again. So I just want it to look nice. So when I copy and paste it, it will look all right. There we go. That's cool. Then I don't know what happened to the Jeeper Creepers. I like the films that I saw. I think there were 2 of them. I don't know if they made any more than that. but it was fun while it lasted. So one of the things when you're cleaning up a scene like I'm doing right now is you've got to gauge your time. So when I'm not online anymore, I'll actually time myself and figure out how long it's taken me to do each of these drawings, and that will help me figure out how long it'll take me to finish off this scene. So probably what I'm going to do now is I'll just do the last drawing because it'll make my life easier. While I'm online, I can actually draw something cool. I want to make a legit Michael versus Jason. Now here's the problem with these characters that are invincible. Is like, how do you kill them? And that was I think the problem I had with Jason, where I kind of stopped paying attention. Is they kill him, he comes back. They kill him, he comes back. And it was the same thing that happened with I think it was American Story, Coven. And they kept killing characters, and then they'd come back to life. And I just kind of went, what? You know, are they dead or not? Well, they're dead, but they're not really dead. And as a writer, you have to keep coming up with ways to get yourself out of a corner you painted yourself into. And they call it pushing the reset button sometimes. And that's one of the reasons I stopped with series things, is because I found that I didn't have any tolerance whatsoever for people who were cheating when they pushed the reset button and doing things that didn't. It just seemed kind of cheap and too easy. But I think part of that is becoming older and being a little more jaded. I teach a story class, and so it's difficult for me to kind of suspend disbelief and go back to the place that I was before. When the first time I ever saw a story that ended, they say, "Oh, it was all a dream." I am not really able to watch things where it ends up being a dream anymore because of that very reason. But there was a time when I was younger, and I was very excited about things. It's like, oh wow, it turned out to be all a dream. That's new. I never thought that was possible. You know, or another one that's been happening a lot lately is, oh, these are the dying thoughts of somebody. You're watching their dying thoughts. None of this is actually happening. This is just what their brain is going through as they leave this mortal coil. And it's like, well, it's been done a lot. And the first time I saw it was Jacob's Ladder, and I didn't get it at all. I had no clue. But anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. Here we go. But you asked. JD can gameplay on YouTube for Terror Dome. It's Mortal Kombat with horror. That's awesome. Wow. They got in hot water because of copyright. I bet the game's cool. Well, as long as it's up, I guess, even if they got in trouble, the game is still available. And they have Jeepers Creepers 3, but it was horrible. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. And this harkens back to what I've often said when I'm doing these live streams, which is Hollywood will only make things as long as they're making money. Once something stops making money for Hollywood, then you won't see it anymore. So if there's something that you really like, go out there and support it. Buy it. I know how easy it is to download things for free. But nowadays, if you want something to continue on, you need to show your support. And the support happens in two ways. One is that people watch it, watching things. And the other way is people paying for things. And that's probably the most important one of all, because Hollywood is based in making money. It's a job. And it's actually, this is something that's on topic. Maybe you can think of it. Biggest influence in crime is Scarface. That's funny. Well, here, John Skull, let me ask you this. A couple questions about Scarface. Do you think that it was a realistic interpretation of crime? And do you think that it was a happy ending? Because I've talked to people who say, well, Scarface, he got what he wanted. I'm like, yeah, but he croaked and he's shot down and went down. But they say, yeah, but he went down in flames. He went down in glory. So I'm always curious to see how people feel about that. If they think that this was a happy ending because he ended up succeeding, or do they think that it was maybe bittersweet? And then did they think that that was a realistic depiction of crime, or was it maybe a little bit cartoony and over the top? When I saw it, I'll just show my hand. When I saw it, I was, I think, 17, and I sneaked into the theater even though I wasn't old enough. And I thought it was a hoot. I mean, I like it legitimately as a movie, but even as a kid, I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding. This is just, it's just so over the top, the colors and the action and the, but I know people who take it seriously, and they're like, no, that's it's a serious thing, and some people aspire to kind of have some of that stuff. So I'm not making a judgment call. I'm just curious. When I hear that, I like to hear people tell me, you know, what about Scarface is their influence. Unless maybe you're talking about the Scarface game, in which case that's another topic altogether. But thanks for that, JD. That's awesome. It's nice to hear about these things. Some of these examples that are out there. Just kind of checking to make sure I haven't missed any meetings and messages. Sometimes things don't show up, and I have to check in with different platforms that we're on and make sure that everybody's comments are being addressed. But it looks like we're good. And I love that you guys are commenting on things and talking to each other. That's always fun for me. And it looks like we've got some sharing going on too with Insta. So that's always cool. And that's what I've said, you know, a place that can be a place of networking can be even a place like this, when people are talking to each other and saying, oh, by the way, did you know that so-and-so is hiring? And that always makes me happy to hear people sharing information that they know about shows or games or any old thing that's going on out there in the world. As a teacher, one of the downsides to being a full-time teacher is I'm no longer in production, and so I kind of rely on my students to keep me abreast of what's going on, what they like the best. I don't feel too afraid that I'm losing touch as you know, as far as the skills, because the skills themselves don't really change, and that's just so you guys know. That's why I always reiterate. Try not to be a technology chaser unless that's truly what you love to do. If that's what your favorite thing to do is keep up with the latest software platforms, the latest technologies, well, great, do that. We need people that do that. But if your mission is to become, say, an animator, then what you really need to do is know how to animate. And the idea of, oh, well, I need to be able to animate solely in Toon Boom or solely in TV Paint or solely in Flipbook or wherever things are right now. That's always going to change. That's going to keep going and going, and there's always going to be something newer, better, and faster. But if you know the 12 principles, if you know how to draw, if you know timing, you know, whether it's even CG timing or 2D timing, but if you know timing, and timing means you know how things are supposed to look, because you look at reference and you don't just look at stylized animation, but you have an understanding of how things look in the real world, well, then you can apply what you've learned. When DreamWorks was first starting out, they took all their animators and just made them CG animators. And I don't know that a lot of them were all that happy about that. I think they wanted to just keep doing what they love to do, but they made them to be animators, and a lot of them were very successful because they were applying skills that they'd learned from day one about animation, and were able to transfer those to the CG universe. I know James Baxter obviously was able to do that very successfully, and is one of the masters of animation who I was lucky enough to get to work with. And he got up to speed on CG animation in no time because, as far as I know, I mean, I never asked him personally. When I was working with him, we were working, so I didn't get a lot of chance to geek out. But from my understanding of it is, it's like, well, this is a tool, and like any tool, it's there to help you get across your vision, whatever vision that is. And so the idea of chasing software because there's something new on the block, that never really appealed to me. I was always much more about, well, learn the skills and then you can learn the tool, whether it's Toon Boom or anything else. You can, as long as you've got one platform under your belt, you're in good shape, because you do need to know things like timelines. What is a timeline in a motion graphics program? How does it work? And what do I do with it? How do I manipulate it to get what I want, you know, out of my animation? So you need to start somewhere and learn a program eventually, whatever that program is. But once you've done that, then it's just a matter of, well, is everything there in this new program that I know I need? A timeline, a way to show keys, to create keys and then flip them and have them animate. So those are the things that you really need, and any good program is going to have those things. So just you got to start somewhere. That's the only caveat. But once you've started, then it's not that hard to get up to speed on other programs that are based in a similar way. But yeah, for the people that I worked with who started out in when there was a transition phase from 2D to 3D, when they basically said that there would be no more 2D, and so you better learn how to do CG if you want to keep your job. And a lot of people lost their jobs. Well, once I learned Maya, everything after that was easy. We had to learn Emo, which is the program that they used to make the Shrek films, and Madagascar. And then right after that, I had to learn Voodoo, which is a proprietary program that was the company Rhythm and Hues that I worked for to do Life of Pi. And so boom, 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 I had to learn these new programs. And I was teaching myself Flash at the same time because I really wanted to do 2D stuff. And that seemed to be the program that was going to be the one. For a long time, that seemed to be the one that was best for doing 2D in a digital world. And so I was learning all these programs all at once. Well, once I figured out, it's like, oh, well, there's a timeline. There's a way to make keys and designate those as keyframes. And then there's a way to do onion skinning, like in-betweens. Once I saw that, it's like, oh, well, this is just like everything else I've ever done. It's kind of in a different universe, but it's still the same old song and dance. It's in-betweens and keys and flipping and tracing and placing and then studying timing and stuff. So just start with something and then you can proceed from there and follow along with wherever technology takes us next. So Scarface, well, the ending works, but it was messed up, but I think it was a mixture of realistic and over the top. Yeah, sure. No, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was very sincere about it and realistic. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Scarface. Like I said, I saw it like 3 or 4 times in the theater. Managed to sneak into the theater in 1983, 84 when it was Christmas. And I drove in the snow. It's so off the point, but I drove in the snow. I just started driving and I didn't know how to drive in the snow, and I drove through the snow to see Scarface at I think it was 11 o'clock showing. And the movie is not short. If you've seen it, you know it's close to or maybe 3 hours long. And I just loved it. And one of the reasons I loved it, I was a big fan. Well, probably the reason I went was I was a fan of Brian De Palma. I was a fan of Giorgio Moroder, who did the soundtrack. And I thought, wow, what a perfect combination, Moroder and De Palma. And De Palma always had these glitzy images. If you've seen his films, you know what I mean. They're passé now, but at the time, his stuff was always very glamorous and glitzy and kind of Hitchcock inspired. And then Moroder had this Euro sensibility he always brought to his music. And the two of them together was just, I was just in heaven. And then I liked Pacino, obviously everybody did in my generation. So I thought, he can't hurt it. I didn't know he'd do what he did with it. and then the rest was just icing on the cake. And so, yeah, I really liked that film. I went to a screening of it. We did a screening of it, I think, in 2006 in Hollywood, right about the time I left DreamWorks. And I went to that at the Hollywood Dome, the Cinerama Theater, but not the Dome itself. We were going to go and see Scarface at a screening back in March in Hollywood, and it got canceled because of obvious reasons, lockdown reasons. So I'm unfortunately we weren't able to see the screening. They were going to have like people in costume and a dance floor and all sorts of fun stuff. I hope they do it again. It does get revived now and then, but I saw a really nice screening of it, like I said, in 2006, and they almost did one here this year. Did De Palma do Phantom of the Paradise? Yes. JD, you should know that. I'm disappointed in you, JD, that you don't know that. The question is do you like that film? I honestly don't remember it. I haven't seen it since I first saw it. And I remember liking it, but I didn't quite get it, and so I've never seen it again since. But I probably like it now if I saw it. But I know people love that one, and they think it's kind of atypical for De Palma that he did it in the first place. But it was bizarre. I've seen most of De Palma's stuff. Yeah, I recommend, was it Sisters? If you like De Palma and you want something that's bizarre but not quite as bizarre as Phantom of the Paradise, not so messed up in the stylized, campy 70s vein. But Sisters, I believe, is De Palma's first film where he tried to do something in the Hitchcock mode. So you got, I think he's got Bernard Herrmann did the soundtrack. It was before DiMaggio soundtracks. And then it stars Margot Kidder in one of the best roles ever. Outside of Black Christmas, I think that's the best thing she ever did. She's just awesome. And it's very Hitchcockian and very stylized. And it shows you the De Palma that would come later with Carrie and Dressed to Kill and Body Double. It was the beginning of his Hitchcock phase. So that one, and then Obsession. But Obsession's really sad. It's not that much fun. It's beautiful. It's a full, solid Brian De Palma Hitchcock homage film, but it's very sad. It doesn't have it's not a lot of fun because it's sad. Whereas Sisters is just a hoot, and these are straightforward films. They're not that campy stuff. The one to avoid is the comedy he made in the middle of all his classic films. I don't even remember what it was called, but it had Nancy Allen in it. It's just the worst. From 1980. It was made as a project with UCLA students. And I thought, oh wow, can you imagine being in a class and your project is going to be to make Brian De Palma's film? And that's how you're going to spend your class, is making a film with Brian De Palma. Whew. If you've seen the documentary of him, you know he's a really cool guy. It seems like he is anyway. Anyway, sorry, this is way off the topic, but JD, you got me started. The John Scully loved the Goosebumps 90s. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, those are great. I tried to watch the movie, but I wasn't real thrilled with how the movie turned out. I didn't think it captured the spirit, really. But I'm always willing and eager to be proven wrong when people will tell me that, no, it's awesome, you just didn't get it. Yep, okay, fair enough. All right, so now obviously I'm just going through and I'm doing vector lines to color the character eventually. So first I got to put a clean line around it. And as you can see, hopefully I'm trying to copy and paste as much as I can from things that have already been drawn. And that's a way that I'm going to keep this unified and keep it looking nice. So I'm just copying and pasting, and then I purposely made this character really simple so that this process would go fast. Obviously when I'm doing a live stream, it's a little harder to go fast, but when I get trucking on this at some point, then this will go really quickly because I've copied and pasted a lot, and because I've intentionally made it a simple character. So for those of you out there who are interested in doing your own animation pieces, may I remind you, which I always tell my students, that less is more. Having a character with all sorts of ornate detail on it may look good in one or two drawings, but when you have to draw it, you will find that after having spent 2 or 3 hours doing this, and you've done 2 or 3 drawings, you may find that it's making you nuts, and then you may find you don't want to do it anymore, and we don't want that to happen. And so I encourage people to, especially when you're getting started, to keep it simple and keep thinking in terms of simple character designs and concentrate on the animation itself. And then the complexity will come. And people sometimes will say to me, they'll say, well, I look at these Disney cartoons and the characters are so beautiful and I want to be able to do that. Well, the secret to that is we were doing it all day and we were getting paid to do it. And so short of doing that, you're not expected, nobody's expecting you to come up with something like that has all that detail work. And so I know people like Michel Gagne, who's an old pal, not an active pal, but we work together, we're old friends. And he's doing his, I think it's Story of Rex right now, that he got a Kickstarter to do. And he's been doing it for a really long time. And that's because quality takes a long time, and he's doing it all himself. And then there's Jamie Lopez, who's doing the steampunk project, Hullabaloo, I believe it's called. You can look all this stuff up if you're interested. And so it's a fully realized, 2D animation piece, but it just takes a long time to do animation. That's just the bottom line. So when you're doing your own projects, you want to think about economy and think how you can actually make your projects come to life, but not spend your whole life doing them. And so if you ever have seen my shorts, or if I ever show them again, because I link to them sometimes here in these Twitch feeds. I'm not going to do that today, but beg, and maybe I will. No, but you'll see that I did limited animation, because I knew that the only way to get the thing finished was if I used economical animation. So I was influenced by like Charlie Brown cartoons from the 70s and the Saturday morning stuff, but without sacrificing too much of the quality. So you make it the style, and that's what I've talked about this before. Shows like South Park and Simpsons, they embraced their style, and Ren and Stimpy embraced their style and made the show about that. Adventure Time, that's another one, where it's the simplicity of it is what you like about the show. And so if you're trying to do your own stuff, be smart and don't try to reinvent, I don't know, Fantasia or something. Try to do the best thing that you possibly can with a simple character. And this is what I always mention to my friend Josh, who did the Lucas the Spider. And that's a spider. It's a really simple little character, and it was done as a private project, not private, but it was done as a personal project that he just thought, oh, I'll just throw that up on YouTube and share it. And as a result, it took off like a shot. But every one of the shorts that he did were very simple, very quick, very simple, to the point. The idea was funny and cute, and people picked up on it, and that's all he had to do. Just keep doing these little 30-second, or however long they are, pieces. He didn't try to do a feature film all by himself, because he knew that it wouldn't turn out. It wouldn't look good, because he didn't have the resources to do his own feature film. Now, whether that's time or energy or money or whatever, he knew he didn't have the resources, and so he did what he could with what he had. And then now he's talking, well, he's made a deal, I think, to do the thing as a show. And now he does have the resources, because he did it first himself on a small format budget. I mean, it didn't cost him anything, as far as I know. He just did it himself. But because of that, because it was good, it was a small, simple idea, and he proved that it was a viable idea, and now he's going to be making a show out of it officially. So that could happen to you too. You just have to hang in there and keep doing the kinds of things that you love. So it's Sony that made the movies to mess things up. So Sony messed up they're the ones who messed up the Goosebumps movies. Well, that's a shame. Well, maybe they'll reboot them, because everybody's a fan of rebooting, right? So maybe eventually they'll reboot the Goosebumps movies and turn them into something a little bit more than they have been traditionally. Because, yeah, I watched them and I thought they were cute, but I thought they weren't quite up to the par of the shows that they did, and the books. And so the goal is the horror genre is to make a film on cosmic horror. Oh, that's cool. Not even sure what cosmic horror is. Maybe you could explain that. I do know this, that we were all very excited in the 90s, or whenever it was I first started animating. We were all like, ooh, why doesn't somebody do a 2D horror film? And I think Heavy Metal has a sequence, the animated film from 1981, which, you know, it is what it is. I don't say yay or nay about it, but it had a sequence in there where these B-52 bombers, I think they are B-52, I don't know, somebody could correct me, but they come back to life. These dead guys come back to life as zombies, and they attack, and it's all done with 2D animation. It was, looking back now, I guess this was kind of had a anime aspect to it, but we were all like, yeah, do more of that, do horror, but it's 2D animation, fully realized. And they didn't do anything like that. I think in Page Master is another one where they had a section of that's Macaulay Culkin in the 90s, and he goes into different books, and one of the books he goes into is, I think, The Werewolf, or it's a horror film or something, and they did a whole horror section in that movie, and we were like, yeah, do some more of that. And just nobody has, and they have done it in anime, but I'm still waiting for someone to mix the aesthetic of anime with Western storytelling, and, you know, just meld the two together and then get it right and do something that's accessible for everybody in the way that Disney films always were, but has the inaccessible, for want of a better word, but has the aesthetics that the animated films has, the adult storytelling, the sophisticated storytelling, and the different character designs and things like that. So maybe one of you guys out there will be the first one to do a horror animated film and just watch it take off and watch what happens. They were going to try and do a film noir. You can maybe see it online. I don't know if it's still out there. It comes and goes. They put it up and then it gets taken down. They put it up again. It was called Arrow, and it was made by a studio called Croyer, and they were going to do this New Orleans voodoo witches, and very gritty and violent, definitely PG, maybe even more rated. And so they did a sizzle reel for that. They did a bunch of animation, and we all were all waiting with bated breath to see if that came out, and it didn't come to pass, and we were all very disappointed. So so the world is waiting for someone to do a project like that, to do something that's a little more adult, a little more serious, and in a genre that's not usually represented in Western animation, at least, like film noir or horror or sci-fi even. I guess there was Titan AE. It did all right, but it just still, most of us, we were just like, close, but not quite. The subgenre of horror fiction that emphasizes cosmic horror, the unknown more than the gore, or the elements of shock. Well, that's cool. I learn something every day. And then I'm also still looking for the Lovecraft thing, because right now there's a lot of fantasy films that are emphasizing that kind of Lovecraftian fourth dimension world where weird creatures exist and weird things happen. So just ripe for animation, but it's going to take somebody to put it together. It's not easy to make an animated film, as you may have noticed. So, hey Fusion RV, welcome. Toon Boom looks pretty complicated. Mostly use Blender to practice. Yeah, I mean, listen, the bottom line with any 2D animation program is you're going to have to want to draw, and you have to be able to draw. And so if that's not something you're interested in, then odds are, you know, Toon Boom might not be for you. But don't discount it completely, because you can do the rigged animation style. So again, as soon as we have this thing together, it's waiting in the wings, but it's just not ready yet. I'm going to haul out one of our rigs that we are going to use to teach our new classes and show you the rigged character and how it works, and how you don't have to draw every single frame, and you can still get really nice results. A lot of squash and stretch, and a lot of cool things that you can do without having to draw every frame like I'm doing right now. And yeah, I'm not going to lie, Toon Boom is a complicated program. It's not the easiest thing in the world to get. But when I teach it, one of the things that I do is I tell you only the things that you need to know about this program. I don't, at least not yet, the classes that I teach, they're not about mastery of the software. They're how do I get up to speed as quickly as I can so I can start animating. And then if you want to take it further from there, you're more than welcome to, but that's not the emphasis. I just want to teach students enough so that they can do the things that they want to do. Again, using this as a tool and not as the end point of the work. Not the end goal isn't, oh, I want to be proficient in Toon Boom. I want to be proficient enough in an animation program that I can do the things that I want, and so I can make my own projects and make my own animation. And then it's just up to you, just spending the hours and hours and hours that you need to be able to do this. Think about it this way. I would assume most people, if anybody who's watching this, it's like you like games, and you know that games take a long time. I know other people who like to binge watch TV shows, and those things take a long time. Well, it's the same thing with animation. It takes the same long time that stuff like that takes. But in a case like animation, not to discount the other things that you like to do with your time, but in this case, you're doing something that's going to help you get a career, perhaps, or help you to do the kind of projects that you've always dreamed of doing, making shorts, making sizzle reels for TV shows that you want to do, or graphic novel setups, things like that, that once you do have the resources, then you can actually put together. So spending hours and hours and hours doing something like what I'm doing today may or may not, but it may result in you ending up with the skills that you need to be able to get a job doing this or sell your project. If it doesn't, then you've spent a heck of a lot of time doing something that you really love doing and getting better at it. And trust me when I say that will always pay off. And there's always something that you'll be able to get from the time that you spent doing stuff like this, whether it's furthering your drawing skills or your ability to understand how motion works so that you can direct later. It's all going to seem worth it in the end. Everything I ever did, I've been able to use in one way or another. I've done live musicals, I've done movies of my own, and short films of my own, animated films, and everything comes together when you're on a set and you're like, I've got to think fast and I've got to figure out how to solve this problem. Oh, well, I know how to do this. Or there was at Rhythm and Hues where they would ask us to do things, and I'm like, well, fortunately, I learned how to move a camera around and make sure it still works in 3D on another film, so that when they asked me to do that on Life of Pi, I was able to. Spending time doing things that you really love doing in a way that's furthering your creative abilities, I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, it takes hours and hours and hours, but you could be spending hours and hours doing something else that doesn't improve your abilities or your career. And isn't it nice to spend time doing something that does? All right. Yeah, cosmic horror is about weird creatures in different worlds, etc. Oh, okay, so that's what it's called, cosmic horror. All right, I didn't know that. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I've just only heard people say it's Lovecraftian, and I don't even know what that means. I've read Lovecraft, and I get it, but I think that that's a pretty wide description. I think that Lovecraft was very specific about his world. But anyway, it's another topic. We're running out of time here. We're about done for another session today. Be sure and let me know if there's anything that you would like to talk about for the future class. Like I said, I'm just working on this tonight because I wanted to get a start on it. I'll have done a lot more on this next time. And then probably next time I'm going to bring in another piece. I've got a sort of a Sleeping Beauty thing, which has a lot to do with overlap and follow through as well. But I can just talk about the process of animating that scene. Maybe not next time. I'll still be doing cleanup on this, but again, I'm at your disposal. I'm happy to talk about anything that you want to talk about animation related. I hope you've enjoyed spending some time tonight or today, wherever you are, talking about stuff, animation. I certainly had a good time, and I appreciate you hanging out with me and talking to me and talking to each other. But like I said, yeah, if you have any specific things you want me to bring to these streams, I am always happy to bring stuff. If I can prepare something, that's great. Otherwise, I will be back here next week doing the same old shtick, and hope to see some of you here next week for more. So I'm going to wrap up today by just reviewing what I've shown and what I've done, and just remind you of where we've been and what we were working on, in case anybody's curious. So I started out with this idea that's based on this character avatar, who is a very bouncy, fun character, and also based a little bit on Mickey Mouse in The Sorcerer's Apprentice with this big floppy robe and his pointy hat and his gloved hand. So the combination of these three things, I kind of came up with my own version of Avatar that's not completely a ripoff of the Bakshi character from the film Wizards. And initially I had animated this back in, oh boy, I don't even know when it was. I'm not even going to say, a long time ago. And I'd done the animation, and while I thought it was fairly successful, and I thought it turned out how I wanted to at the time, I wasn't completely happy with it. I never got to finish it, never got to color it and clean it up and do everything. It was part of a short film, which who knows, maybe I'll eventually finish the whole thing off, but probably not. I'd moved on. But this scene I always thought was kind of fun. It showed exaggeration and overlap and follow through. And so I started cleaning it up a couple, 2-3 sessions ago. And now here we are. Let me turn up the, oh, well, we can just play this layer and you'll see. So this is how it looks now. No, it's too light. So I'm going to darken it up a little bit, turn up the opacity, and then you can see how it looks. And then we'll close with that for today. So this is how it looks now. So there's a lot more overlap and follow through on the back of the hat, and then the hat, I've recently just made the back of the hat just now. I made it shorter, so I'll probably fix that up offline. And the sleeves, a lot more overlap and bounciness to them, a lot more bounciness and overlap on the beard. And then the feet, I've planted them a lot better and added a little step, and then some stuff to the lower part of the cloak, which I think I'll still work on. But anyway, that's, if you compare it to the old version, you can see, here's the old version. It's pretty similar, but hopefully you can see the difference between the old version and how a little more stiff it is. And then the new version, which is a lot more loose and floppy and gradually getting more and more in proportion as I go. So again, thank you for joining me tonight. It's been a real pleasure. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you had some fun. I hope to see you again next time. And as I said, feel free to ask me any questions anytime. Check out CG Spectrum, some of the new things that are being offered now with the new classes that came out with the new website recently. Check out the other streams, other CG Spectrum streams that are available. Check out the free 4-week, I think they're free 4-week trial classes if there's anything that you're interested in doing. And yes, Fusion RV, yeah, there are other streams available too, so there are a whole bunch of different things that you might be interested in, but we'd love to see you again next time. Yeah, anybody who wants to come back and talk some more about animation, 2D, 3D, it's all good to me. But that's it for me for tonight. Have a great rest of the day or rest of the night, wherever you're at. And be safe, be well, and I will just talk to you next time. Thanks a lot. Take care.